Well, it's that time. Midseason top 25. If you watch my preseason top 25, then you'll see some familiar names on this list. But if you haven't, go check it out. I believe I posted it in August, near the end of August, some point. So I'll leave a link to it in the description down below to it. Anyways, let's go ahead and go on with it because this is probably going to be maybe a lengthy video. So let's start it off. Number 25 this season, we have the 5-1 NC State Wolfpack. NC State's kind of looked. I mean, they look like NC State, like not the world beaters that some people thought they were in the offseason. And honestly, they look a little bit worse than they did last year. They struggled in week 1 to East Carolina, which I get it, it's a rivalry, but the way people were hyping up this team with Devin Leary and everything in the offseason, you would have thought that they would have came out and silenced the people that thought it would have been a close game, which it was. Their one loss came to Clemson in a 10-point loss. They did pretty well. They just have not looked like the teams in front of them as good. If they continue to win, they'll rise up in my rankings. But right now, I don't think they're going to get out of the top. I don't think they're going to get out of the 20s. Dave Dorian, good head coach. But if they can get that going, then NC State will rise. Next up, number 24, I have a team that I had that I thought would not do good at least this year, and that's the Illinois Illini at 5-1 under Brett Bielema. If you can recall from a couple of years ago, Brett Bielema was at Wisconsin, built them up to be kind of a run-first physical team, and at Arkansas, and did the same thing. And he's doing the same thing at Illinois. I thought it was going to take at least another year for them to be even close to this good, but Illinois is doing very well. They've beaten Wisconsin and Iowa in back-to-back weeks. Their only loss came in week 1 in a close one against against Indiana, who Indiana's not a good team. It's kind of switched with Indiana and Illinois, how I thought this would shake out. They have a great running game with running back Chase Brown. He has over 800 yards. Tommy DeVito, transfer quarterback from Syracuse, is doing well. He has over 1,000 yards passing. And Illinois if they keep this up, I don't think that they'd be able to. Well, they may make it to the Big Ten championship. The West is not very good this year for the Big Ten. So that's why I have Illinois at 24. At number 23, I have the 4-2 Washington Huskies. Now, before you get on me about this, Washington, the first few weeks of the season, Washington's offense with Michael Penix Jr. looked great. Kalen DeBoer had this team absolutely shocking the world with big wins against Stanford and Michigan State, who Michigan State was at number 11 at the time, which we know now that they're not really that good right now. Now, what's happened to Washington is they lost back-to-back weeks, one to UCLA and one in a heartbreaker against Arizona State. If you saw that game, you know what I'm talking about. So, I mean, if they can turn it around, they can stay in this. But if they lose another game, they're going to be out of my top 25. You got to be consistent. Now, this ain't the only 2-loss team in my countdown, but it's not going to be a trend after the next few. So, speaking of that, number 22, I have the 4-2 Utah Utes under Kyle Whittingham. They've just come up with some close losses. They lost a close one in week 1 in the swamp to Florida. If Cam Rising doesn't throw that pick, they have a chance to tie the game and send it to overtime. And against UCLA, I believe they were down by a touchdown. but they've looked good. They don't look as good as they did last year. They could pull what they did last year and just have a big turnaround after having 2 losses. But we'll see what happens. They still control their own destiny in the Pac-12 South. Or actually, there's no more divisions, so it's just the Pac-12. They're just going to need USC or UCLA to lose a few games. Next up, I have the 3-2 Baylor Bears under Dave Aranda. Baylor, so far they've lost on the road in overtime against BYU and to Oklahoma State. They've beaten Iowa State. That's an okay win. It's just, this team just seems off. Defense still good, but they're giving up points. Especially they gave up a good bit to Oklahoma State. And the offense hasn't been able to keep up. So they're going to have to make some adjustments, especially when they get to the games against, like, TCU, Texas, Kansas State even, and even Kansas later in the season. So we'll see what happens. At number 20, I have the Texas Longhorns at 4-2. Texas, I honestly thought that Texas was going to be okay this season. I didn't think they were going to start out and keep up with Alabama. And honestly, the only reason I have them ranked is because of Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers is a game changer for this Texas team. I saw it against Alabama until he got hurt. If he would have stayed in the game, then they would have blown Alabama out of the water. Now, I know I'm sounding a lot like the Alabama fans that said if Jameson Williams didn't get hurt, they would have blown Georgia out. But it's different with a quarterback. If a quarterback gets hurt, then your whole team can just not be there. Look at teams that are carried by their quarterbacks. Look at Louisville with Michael Cunningham, however you say it. Without him, Louisville would be a 3-win team max. And Texas, with Quinn Ewers, they'd be undefeated right now. Without him, they're probably still 4-2. But with the Jameson Williams thing, the wide receiver position is a lot easier to have quality depth for, than quarterback. So it's a lot different. So there you go. Take that comment section. Anyways, let me get off that tangent. Texas absolutely destroyed Oklahoma this past weekend in the Red River Shootout. 49-0, excuse me. And their only 2 losses came to Alabama by 1 and Texas Tech by a touchdown. Now, next up, we get into the teens. We have number 19, 5-1 Kansas State. Kansas State, under Adrian Martinez has just had a career resurgence in Manhattan. The only blemish they have was against Tulane, and that's why I don't have them any higher than 19. They beat I believe, ranked number 6 Oklahoma at the time, and Adrian Martinez went off in that game. And if they continue, they have a chance to go and even win the Big 12. Any team on this list right now has a chance of going and winning the Big 12. That's just how much parity is in the Big 12 right now. Moving on, number 18, I have the North Carolina Tar Heels. At 5-1, with their only loss being against Notre Dame. Besides the Notre Dame, they haven't really played many other good teams. They played Miami. They beat them 27-24, I believe. They won a shootout against Appalachian State. They have a great offense under their freshman quarterback. Forget his name, honestly. Sorry about that. And their defense is not the best. But if they can keep outgunning teams, they still have a chance of making it to the ACC championship. I don't think they'll win it, just because of how stacked the Atlantic is right now, but they have a chance to compete for it. At number 17, we have Kansas. Kansas, the Cinderella story of this season, 5-1. They lost this past weekend to TCU, and one of the reasons was because of Jalen Daniels' injury. Hope the best for him. Hope he gets back better than he was, or better than he is now. With Jalen Daniels, Kansas is a absolute powerhouse offensively. They came out of nowhere under Lance Leopold, it seems like, but they've improved so much from last year. They, along with every other Big 12 team, like I said, have a chance of winning the Big 12. I think they have a chance of having 9 to 10 wins maybe this year, but they're just going to have to stay healthy. Now, at number 16, I have another team that came out of nowhere, the Syracuse Orange at 5-0. Dino Babers has this team on one this year. Their best win was against Purdue at home, and Sean Tucker, their running back, has been just amazing for them. Who was their quarterback? He transferred in from Mississippi State. I'll remember his name in a little bit. Anyways, Syracuse, if they keep this going, like North Carolina, they could end up in the ACC championship. They have Clemson coming up on their schedule, so if they can keep up and even beat Clemson, they're going to be a bona fide contender in the ACC. Just like number 15, Wake Forest, who sadly lost to Clemson in overtime. But they still control their own destiny. So we'll see if they can do that. Dave Clawson has this team doing pretty well with, what's his name? I'm terrible with names. I have Sam Hartman, that's who it is, their quarterback. They just got a big win over Florida State about 2 weeks ago. So if they can keep it up, they should be in the right place in the ACC. At number 14, I have the TCU Horned Frogs at 6-0. This is probably, right now, fighting for the best team in the Big 12. They got a big win over Kansas this past weekend. Sonny Dykes, coming over from SMU, has this team going well. Max Duggan, great quarterback. This team, if they can keep it up, the Big 12 right now, either some teams are going to fall off or they're all going to be around 8 or 9 wins just because of how much parity is in the Big 12 right now. Right now, the only team that's really in the basement is Oklahoma, which if I said that about 3 years ago, it'd be mind-boggling. Anyways, moving on. At number 13, I have the 6-0 UCLA Bruins. Chip Kelly finally has this UCLA team contending again. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is a menace to society. You have their running back who came over from Michigan. His name escapes me right now. But he's doing well. They did struggle a little bit with South Alabama a couple of weeks ago. But there's a reason I have them under some of these teams behind. Sorry about that. Getting over a cold. Anyways, I have them behind some of these teams I have in front of them. But if they keep winning, they will steadily grow up and up. This is one of the teams I have ahead of them. Oregon, 5-1. Oregon, ever since getting absolutely destroyed by Georgia in Atlanta, they have won 5 straight, including wins over ranked BYU and a really good Washington State team. If they can continue, they're another contender for the Pac-12. Dan Lanning has these guys doing very well. So, if Bo Nix can continue to not struggle, which he has a couple of road games coming up that will be tough. He's known to struggle on the road, then they could be a force. Next up, at number 11, I have the Ole Miss Rebels, who are 6-0. I don't know, dude. Ole Miss, if you watched if you kept up with the Ole Miss Vandy game this past weekend, Vandy was giving Ole Miss trouble in the first half. They had a big win against Kentucky the week before, so I could see why they would come out kind of sloppy. But their offense just hasn't been what it has been. Their defense has been a lot better. Their run game is good. It's just can Lane Kiffin get the passing game going by the end of the season, especially in week 11 when they go and play Alabama. We'll see. Next up, the other Mississippi school, Mississippi State, 5-1 under Mike Leach. They've been on a roll, beating two should be very physical teams in Arkansas and Texas A&M. Now, Arkansas, their secondary is not very good. Neither is, Texas A&M's run defense isn't very good, and Mississippi State ran on them. It's hard to say with Mississippi State. We'll see in a couple of weeks when they play Alabama. Their one loss was against LSU, which kind of confuses me because LSU doesn't have the best secondary either. But they have looked good. I'll give them that. And if they can continue, then they'll keep rising, just like I've said with a lot of these other teams. Getting inside the top 10, at number 9, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions at 5-0 under James Franklin. They've done pretty well. They struggled with Northwestern, but that was in pretty much a monsoon. They had a close game with Purdue that they won, and they blew out Auburn in Jordan-Hare. So, Penn State, they're still a good team. So, if they can continue, then they'll maybe be a contender for the Big Ten East. After that, Clemson Tigers at 6-0, Dabo Swinney at number 8. Clemson has done better than I thought they would. Their offense has done better. Their defense is what I thought it would be. They did not look good against Wake Forest defensively, but every other game they've done pretty well. Wake Forest's offense is very good, so I could see why. However, when you get to these teams like Ohio State, Tennessee, and even USC that are very good on offense, it's your defense better clutch up. Now, why do I have them at just number 8? Like I said there with that. And they've played ranked teams, I'll give them that. They've beaten ranked teams. They've beaten number 15 Wake Forest on my top 25 and number 25 NC State. But you have teams ahead of them that have looked better, that have looked more impressive, and have beaten better teams. And if they can continue to prove to me that they are better, have a good offense and a good defense, they will most definitely be in the top 4 in the next couple of weeks. Next up, number 7, I have the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Mike Gundy has his guys going. I thought the Oklahoma State would drop off after last year, losing their defensive coordinator and their captain on the defense, Malcolm Rodriguez, but no, they have not. Spencer Sanders has gotten better, and their offense looks really good, along with the defense not looking the best, but it has worked. So Oklahoma State, right now, I have them the best ranked team in the Big 12. At number 6, I have the Tennessee Volunteers at 5-0. Well, this is a sight for sore eyes. Tennessee has not been ranked in the top 6 since 2006. Josh Heupel has Tennessee going very well. They've they won against 3 teams that were ranked at the time that they played them: Pittsburgh, Florida, and LSU. So right now, they have a really good resume. We'll see how they do against Alabama at home this week. If they can knock off Alabama, they'll most definitely be in the top 4, if not the top 3. Next up, I have the USC Trojans, 6-0 under Lincoln Riley. USC, they've struggled a little bit the last 2 weeks, but they've done well enough to win games. They struggled against Oregon State, and they didn't look the best this past week against Washington State until they pulled away. But they have a very opportunistic defense. I think they're first in turnovers forced. Caleb Williams is amazing on offense. They have Jordan Addison. They have all these playmakers. They have a very good offense run under Lincoln Riley. So, I mean, it's hard to say. If they play Utah and blow them out, I could see them jumping up a spot. But until they beat a team like, let's say, if they beat Utah and UCLA, they'll maybe be in the top 3. They could be in the top 4 if they beat Utah next week. But that's all I got to say about that. At number 4, I have the Michigan Wolverines at 6-0. Michigan, now you can say Michigan hasn't played anybody. They played Maryland, Iowa, and Indiana. Won all those games. In 2 of them, they struggled. They struggled against Maryland, who was ranked, at least in my thing, was ranked at the time, and Iowa, who is not, which they took care of business against Iowa, and Indiana, who was not ranked at the time of mine. If they play, I think they play Penn State this week. If they beat Penn State, they will stay at 4 most likely. If they don't, they'll drop. That's as easy as that. Michigan's offense looks good under J.J. McCarthy, and the defense, even without David Ajabo and Aiden Hutchinson, still looks good. So that's all I got to say about Michigan. Number 3, I have the Georgia Bulldogs at 6-0. Finally, Georgia takes care of business against a team that they are better than. If you heard my last video talk about the game, you'll know what I thought about this game. I think Georgia finally found a rushing offense with Dejon Edwards and Branson Robinson, the freshman. Defense looked good. Still very young on the defensive side, so we had some careless errors like allowing that long touchdown because of some missed tackles. We look better than we did against Missouri. We're getting battle-tested. We'll see how we do against Florida in a couple of weeks. We play Vandy this week, which shouldn't be a problem. But we need to get up for the game. Stetson Bennett needs to work on his long balls. And if we can continue to win, and if we can continue to improve, I see this team being a playoff contender, a national championship contender. And that's why I have them at 3 right now. The only reason I would move them up is if Alabama or Ohio State lost, at least for right now. Now, winning but looking bad can be, I guess you could say, if you win but look bad through 2 weeks, that's when I drop. 2 or 3 weeks, that's when I drop. That's what I did with Georgia. So, that being said, at number 2, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. I've had Alabama at 2 ever since week 1, actually. I think, yeah. No. Yeah, I've either had them 2 or 3 ever since week 1. When they struggled with Texas, I think I dropped them to 3. And then when Georgia struggled 2 weeks in a row with Missouri, I bumped them up to 2. Right ahead of Georgia. They've had some good wins. They took care of business against Arkansas. They beat Texas. But it was not the performance that you want to see. It was on the road, I get it, but yeah. Now for the elephant in the room, literally. Last night, they played Texas A&M at home. Now, I get it. Bryce Young was out. Like I said, when your quarterback is out, that's a valid excuse. Jalen Milroe did not have the game that Bama fans wanted. He did pretty good through the air. He threw 2 touchdowns. Yeah, I think he threw 2 touchdowns. And they ran the ball pretty well. But Texas A&M's defense stepped up very well. Alabama had 5 turnovers, 2 fumbles. It was either 4 or 5. Jalen Milroe fumbled the ball twice, threw an interception, and then Jace McClellan fumbled the ball. I think that was all the turnovers by Alabama. And honestly, you should have. Everything was lining up for you to lose this game. Will Reichard missed 2 field goals in the fourth quarter. Texas A&M drove down the field, got a field goal of their own to make it 20-24, got the ball back, and drove down the field again, and we're on, I believe, the 4 or 5 yard line, 3, 4 or 5 yard line, with 1 play left. And Jimbo absolutely just screwed up, and Haynes King threw a ball that was not even into the end zone. So that's why you won the game. You literally did everything to give A&M the game back. Now, I don't expect you to do that this week. I think that with Bryce Young being back, I could see, honestly, with this game in Knoxville, I could see it going either way. Just because of Tennessee being a lot better than they have been in the past. I believe they're going to get Cedric Tillman back. And Alabama, they have a pretty good run game with Jahmyr Gibbs if they're not running him up the middle every play. I don't think Tennessee has the defense that Texas A&M had to stop the run, nor Arkansas had early in the game to stop the run. So I'm going to lean... I don't know, dude. It could go either way. Now, if you lose this game in Knoxville this upcoming week, you're going to drop a little bit. I don't think you will drop out of the top 10. I do see you dropping in my poll maybe to below 5. Maybe. We'll see if you lose the game. If you win the game, you'll probably stay at 2, barring Ohio State losing somehow. And that gives away who's my number 1. And, of course, is Ohio State at 6-0. So far, they've looked like the most complete team this year. Now, you'll say, but they barely beat Notre Dame in week 1. Again, they were... I can't believe I'm saying this. They were down their 2 best wide receivers. Now, you may say that's sacrilegious to say because of the Alabama. But with the national championship and that Alabama's wide receiver, John Mechie, was already out. You had months to prepare for us with just Jameson Williams. You would have thought that you would have had another wide receiver step up during that time to help. But no, apparently not. Anyways, I'm going to get off that. They were losing. They didn't have, Anyways, they didn't have their 2 best wide receivers. They still won the game. Notre Dame's defense was up to play. But they won the game. Ever since then, Ohio State has blown every team they've played out of the water, including a Wisconsin team who's known for their defense. Michigan State, that's whatever. Their secondary's terrible. But right now, I think Ohio State and Alabama, I think Ohio State's the best team in college football right now. Alabama and Georgia are in that second category. But Alabama having an edge over Georgia right now. Now, that could change when I do my final poll right before the conference championship games, but we'll see. So, anyways, there's my top 25. Here's a brief rundown of what it was. NC State at 5-1 at 25. 24, Illinois 5-1. 23, Washington at 4-2. 22, Utah at 4-2. 21, Baylor at 3-2. 20, Texas at 4-2. 19, Kansas State at 5-1. 18, North Carolina at 5-1. 17, Kansas at 5-1. 16, Syracuse at 5-0. 15, Wake Forest at 5-1. 14, TCU 6-0. 13, UCLA 6-0. 12, Oregon 5-1. 11, Ole Miss at 6-0. 10, Mississippi State at 5-1. 9, Penn State at 5-0. 8, Clemson at 6-0. 7, Oklahoma State at 5-0. 6, Tennessee 5-0. 5, UCLA 6-0. 4, Michigan 6-0. 3, Georgia 6-0. 2, Alabama 6-0. And 1, Ohio State 6-0. So, thank you all so much for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. Let me know which teams you would have had higher, which teams you would have had lower, what teams you would have had in your top 25 that I don't. So, have a great day, and go Dogs.